Hi, I'm Rob from B&H, and as you may have guessed from that intro featuring my colleague Prentice Thompson, we're taking a look and a listen to a new synthesizer from Moog Music, the Sub 37. The Sub 37 is the most recent addition to Moog's line of analog synthesizers. In addition to the great sound and build quality that Moog is known for, the Sub 37 brings a few extras to the table. Most Moog synths are monophonic, meaning you can only play one note at a time, but the Sub 37 is a paraphonic synth, and that means it's capable of two notes at once in duo mode. It also sports a simple but powerful arpeggiator/step sequencer. That arpeggiator, as well as its two modulation buses and looping envelopes, can be synced to internal or external MIDI clock for some remarkable rhythmic effects, as we shall see. In this video, we're going to hit some of the highlights of the Sub 37 sound architecture. Prentice will play some patches for us, and we'll explore the modulation section and the sequencer. As the name implies, the Sub 37 gives you a 37 key or 3-octave keyboard that can be transposed up or down 2 octaves. The keys are Synth Action, not weighted, and they respond to both velocity and aftertouch. That, along with the nicely lit up pitch and mod wheels, and the fact that all the knobs and buttons send and receive MIDI data, makes the Sub 37 a reasonable controller keyboard for external MIDI instruments or virtual instruments in a DAW. And yes, if you're using it as a controller, you can disable the keyboard from triggering the synth. MIDI data is sent and received via USB or the MIDI in and out ports. CV and gate inputs are also on the side here, as well as a 1/4-inch output and a 1/4-inch input, allowing you to process external audio through the Sub 37's ladder filter and multidrive distortion processor. Build quality on the Sub 37 is truly outstanding, with a black steel and aluminum chassis and classy wood side panels, while the 40 knobs and 74 switches feel terrific. Now obviously, when you call up a patch, the dials aren't going to match what's been stored, and when you're designing sounds, who cares? But in live performance, sudden changes in sound can be jarring. But you can take the knobs out of absolute mode and set them to pass-through mode so the sound won't change until the knob passes through its current setting, or you can choose relative mode, where turning a knob slightly makes only minor changes while larger turns yield more radical results, letting the knob kind of catch up to the right place. It's a really smart touch. The Sub 37 features 256 preset locations arranged in 16 banks with 16 patches each. Preset categories and patch names appear on the LCD screen. Let's let Prentice loose on a few of the sounds before we get deeper into the sound architecture. Sounds are generated from the two variable wave shape oscillators and the square wave sub-oscillator. There's also a pink noise generator as well. Selecting the wave shape of the two main oscillators is done with a continuous dial. So that means you can move from a triangle to a sawtooth to a square and a pulse on the far right. If the dial is between waveforms, you're blending the two. You can also use the LFOs or other sources to modulate between waveforms. Oscillator 2 can be detuned in two ways, a traditional frequency detuning, but also a beat frequency detuning, so the beating or phasing between oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 is consistent at all pitches. You can also hard sync the two oscillators together. The Duo button puts the Sub-37 into duo mode, allowing you to play two notes at once. Now, if you only play one note, both oscillators will play the note, but if you play two notes, the second oscillator will play either the higher or lower note, depending on how this button is set. Without either setting, it plays a drone that doesn't follow the keyboard. Instead, you'll set the pitch with the frequency knob, which in this mode now extends across a 6-octave range. The lowest knob in the mixer section is the external in and feedback amount. If you want to run external sounds through the filter, here's where you'll dial that in. If you don't have anything plugged into the external input, the knob routes the output of the mixer back into itself to generate distortion. You can also dial in distortion using the Multidrive Processor in the filter section, and yes, they both sound really good. Not surprisingly, the Sub-37 features a terrific sounding low-pass ladder filter with resonance, of course, and a nice big knob for the cutoff frequency. The slope is variable between 6, 12, 18, and 24 dB per octave. Let's listen to that filter for a little bit. Now in that acid sounding demo, you'll notice that there's some glide in there between notes. Either or both oscillators can be set to glide between pitches. The time and type buttons are used to set glide times, and you can also alter the glide action with the legato and gated buttons. The envelope generators for the filter and amp offer a number of possibilities beyond the usual ADSR options. Press the knob shift function and the 4 filter envelope knobs take on secondary functions, allowing you to add a delay before the attack, a hold after the attack, and adjust the effect velocity and keyboard tracking have on the envelope amounts. A cool feature on the Sub-37 is that it allows you to loop the envelopes, and you can sync the repeat of the loop to the Sub-37's internal clock or an external MIDI clock. So it's a bit like having 2 additional LFOs at your disposal. The Sub-37 features 2 very deep modulation sections with a lot of routing options, and the LFOs here can be synced to the internal or external MIDI clock if you hit the sync button. If you do that, then the rate knob is used to select divisions of the master clock. Both LFOs feature bipolar dedicated knobs to route them to either or both oscillators and the filter. On most of the patches, the amount of modulation from mod 1 is determined by the mod wheel. So you can be dialing in mod amounts on these knobs all day, but you won't hear it until you move the mod wheel. You can alter that in the controllers page though. In addition, I can also have velocity, aftertouch, and MIDI controller data affect the modulation amount to varying degrees. More source options are available on page 2, including a humble sine wave LFO, but also including an oscillator's pitch, as well as note, velocity, and Modwheel data from the sequencer. 5 waveforms are available for the LFOs from the source switch: triangle, square, sawtooth, ramp, and a random sample and hold. The other setting bypasses the LFO altogether for source settings in the controller menu. A third modulation amount knob is down below, and its destination is set with the switch beside it. Note that the last destination setting is EG time/program. On this setting, the default is filter envelope time, which sounds really good on this bass sound, for example. I can change that destination from EG time to any one of the plethora of parameters available in the controller's menu page. You can use the cursor and arrow buttons to navigate parameters and change values on the LCD screen. Conveniently, the tuning knob is now used to change parameter values in this mode and other menu modes as well. Destination options for parameters in the Arpeggiator or sequencer are available as well. Syncing the LFOs with the sequencer can yield some really cool rhythmic results. In this next demo, the source for Modulation 2 is set to sequence velocity, and its destination is Oscillator 1's waveform. So when I dial the amount in, this understated tone starts to come to life. And when I dial in additional filter modulation from Mod 1 on the wheel, it creates a really cool effect. So those demos lead us to the onboard sequencer/arpeggiator. Arpeggiator settings are fairly straightforward. The rate knob sets the speed unless you sync to MIDI or internal clock, and then it controls the clock's subdivision lock. The sync button can be used to tap in the tempo for the internal clock. Of course, you can adjust the direction and the range, and there's a latch switch. Additional settings, including gate times, are in the preset menu, which is accessed by holding the preset button down for a second. Let's listen to a few arpeggiated and sequenced patches. The 64-step sequencer is simple and effective. Set the dial to record, and each note played is recorded in that step, and you can tie notes together and put in rests. And again, using the multiple ways modulation sources and looping envelopes can be synced to clock makes for a myriad of interesting rhythmic possibilities. And yes, if you're sequencing a duophonic patch, you can record 2 notes into the same step. Not a lot of negatives with the Moog Sub 37. The oscillators were very stable while we were using it, although the synth did freeze up a couple of times when I switched patches while latched arpeggiated parts were playing, but that's understandable. Generally, the Sub 37 looks and feels great. The keyboard and controls are really inspiring, and it sounds incredible. Leads, basses, arpeggiated and sequenced parts, sound effects, the Sub 37 delivers top-notch monophonic sounds, and its paraphonic 2-note capability gives it added versatility as well. I'm Rob from B&H, and thanks for watching.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.